Good evening and welcome to the September 10, 2008 Civil Service Commission meeting. Maybe have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Devine?
Here.
Commissioner Coleman?
Here.
Commissioner Manukian?
Here.
Commissioner Gantis?
Here.
Chair Carrion.
Here. What's next?
Reading of the minutes.
Reading of the minutes.
Move to approve as written
Second.
and dispense with reading.
Move to approve, dispense with reading. There's a motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
I need to abstain because I wasn't here at that.
Commissioner Gantis?
Yes.
Chair Carrion.
Yes. Oral communication, we have no cards. What's next?
Recruitment and Examination Status Report.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this report is before you. Lists the various recruitment processes that my staff is working on. Each of the individual analysts, their responsibilities are included on the report. This report shows a total of 73 active processes at various stages. If you have any questions about this report, please, happy to answer them for you.
Any questions? What's next?
Eligible list established.
That's great.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is the regular report on the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. As you can see, there are 5 lists that have been created, 2 of which are promotional, 2 of which are open. One is a combination promotional and open, as is the normal practice here. The number of applications received for each of these recruitments is listed in one column, and then the total number who made it through the various stages of the process appear in the final column. If you have any questions on this, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions?
Human Resources Activity Report.
So before we actually get into this, my recommendation would be, because we had a pretty thick package this week, I would recommend, I really do want to review the details in this particular report. If you can actually just bring this back maybe next week or the week after, unless if somebody objects, or next meeting, not next week, then we can at least review it more carefully and then go over it. If that's okay.
I absolutely agree.
Mr. Gantis?
Whatever.
Whatever?
I'll read. I've read it. I'll look at it now, or I'll look at it later.
Read it again.
Okay. All right.
Another thing I can do with this at night while I'm watching
There we go.
this.
Watch that and read it again.
Mr. Chair, I'll say it now, and I concur with the decision to put this off for a few weeks, but I do want to acknowledge Miss Debbie Mallon from my staff who puts this together. I'd like to do that now because she will be on vacation when we're having our next meeting, and she won't be able to be here. But,
So she won't be able to shine in the raindrops of praise that she'll get.
That's correct. So, anyway, she is here tonight, and again, if you could acknowledge her hard work, because this really is a lot of material to be pulled together, and this is actually the earliest we were able to complete this report. It covers the fiscal year from 07 and 08, and usually we get it around October, and so she's very prompt this year in completing this report. So, with that.
Ms. Long, could you just take the podium for a second? We will be reviewing your hard work coming up in the next 2 weeks, or in 2 weeks or so. But this is a lot of information. I know that you put in a lot of work, and on behalf of the Civil Service Commission, I wanted to thank you for just spending all the time and effort ensuring that all the information in here is accurate and we can actually use in the future. So for that, thank you very much, and have a good time wherever you're going. Where are you going?
Yosemite.
Oh, very nice.
Thank
very
you
nice.
very much.
Thank you.
It's my
Thank
pleasure
you.
to
Thank you
prepare
so
it.
much.
Thank you.
What's next?
Revised class specification and job bulletin, Director of Information Services.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the item before you is really twofold. One is the revision of a class specification for Director of Information Services, as well as the approval of the job bulletin for the same position. We do have, just when we thought we had completed all of our executive recruitments for this year, we have hired 4 in this calendar year. We have yet another one to fill. The incumbent is retiring effective November, and we're going to be doing the recruitment process for this. First of all, to look at the class specification, we have some fairly extensive revisions to the existing specification. That was last updated, I believe, when Ms. Bickham was hired in 1997. This being over 10 years later, we felt it was appropriate, since a lot has changed in the IT world, obviously. We thought we would take this opportunity to modify the specification, mainly the job responsibilities and the essential functions. A lot of the terms, a lot of the jargon has changed in this particular field. Many of the changes are boilerplate that we're trying to emphasize as far as management and leadership and concern for diversity, things like that have been added to this specification. The minimum requirements have not been altered in any significant fashion, so that's the same. Anyway, so that the specification is here for your approval. Also, the bulletin, which more or less reflects the minimum requirements and the job duties, is also before you for approval. Our civil service rules require that all executive recruitment bulletins come before you for approval. It is our intent to conduct this as an open recruitment process. This will be conducted by the HR staff, and we're not going to be hiring an executive search firm, as is sometimes done. We intend to open this recruitment on September 22nd and keep the filing for about a month. With that, there also is a very good organization chart showing you the department. That's at the very back part of this packet. And with that, if you have any questions, be happy to try and answer them. Bob McFall is here, as he's worked with us on both this specification and the bulletin, and as is members of my staff, Manya Hunanian and Amy Martin as well. So with that, if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Just one.
Just one.
Do we have a current assistant director of IS?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Coleman, yes, we do. There's an assistant director.
Is he qualified to
He
apply
or
for this
she.
job? Or is it a she or he?
It is a he, and I have not looked at his qualifications, but I assume he might apply.
Or we just save all the money and just hire him. Anyways, any questions, comments?
One.
Yes.
Are you going to be going nationwide or citywide, or what's the geographic location of your search?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Devine, we would probably be doing fairly extensive recruitment, both, I would say, more the western part of the United States. A lot of the advertisements we will run will be on the web, so that's virtually limitless as far as its reach. So to say this would be a nationwide recruitment, probably unlikely. Most of the recruitment sources, I would say, would be in and around California. Ideally, we'd like to get someone with some public sector background, but we're not limiting it to that. It's a very, very difficult job. This is a very, as you know, very large, complex organization with each department has their own specific IT needs, from our public safety to our different HR departments, public works, fire. There's radio systems, wireless systems, networking systems. So it's a big job. We hope to tap into the labor market and get some good candidates for this.
Any thought to printing it on 2 pages so the print is legible?
Actually, that's a great point. This is the formal job bulletin for the position. We are actually preparing a brochure, which will be a lot more aesthetically pleasing, bigger type, which will be doing the majority of our true outreach utilizing that.
It won't be a brochure, it'll be a book by the time you're done. Well, okay, and then you have researched the salary being pretty competitive.
Well,
This type of a job, but there's a lot of competition for a job like this.
yes, as you can see from the job bulletin, we've kind of left that up in the air at this point. We have stated, depending on qualifications, but we have indicated what the current top step is that the incumbent is currently receiving. But again, we will look at the quality of our applicants and see what is there as far as what needs we would have to attract the right person. And if need be, we will go to the council with a salary ordinance to recommend the appropriate salary range.
Any motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just for purposes of clarification, the motion to approve was based upon the specification and bulletin handed out by Mr. Doyle, not the one in the packet?
That is correct. Is that correct?
Yeah, move to approve as, with the corrections, I guess, right?
Move to second as corrected.
That's right.
Your motion is for the new bulletin, right?
Correct.
And your second is to that same bulletin, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Devine,
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian,
Yes.
Commissioner Gantis,
Yes.
Chair Karian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Request to cancel open eligible list, equipment service worker.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a request to cancel an open eligible list for the position of equipment service worker. This list was established in December of 2006, and the commission does have the authority to cancel eligibility lists, open eligibility lists after 1 year. This list has been in effect for 1 year and approximately 1 year and 9 months. This list will expire naturally in December of 2008. Public Works currently has an opening, and they would like to consider a fresh set of candidates for this position and some new names. One reason in particular for this request to cancel this list is that there is a pretty successful internship program that the Public Works Department has been utilizing, run out of Pasadena City College, where they're sending us candidates who are interested in pursuing a career in mechanical maintenance, and they've actually sent us some good candidates whom we have employed as hourly employees who are doing just an exceptional job in what's ordinarily a very difficult field to recruit for. And there's an attached memo which talks a little about that particular program and the success that our Public Works Department has received with that. Again, the Public Works Department has utilized the list that we have. They have hired 4 people off that list, but they are seeking to cancel it at this point. Per the Commission direction and per your policy, we have notified the next 3 candidates on the existing list of this meeting and of this action, and inform them of their right to be here to contest that. So. With that, I'll leave it with you, Mr. Chair. I do have Mr. Dave Cole as the Mechanical Maintenance Administrator for the Public Works Department, as is Rosie Akopian from my staff, who works with Public Works on these recruitments. So if you have questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, Doctor, I apologize.
Just one quick question. According to the request, the number of certified candidates at inception was 11. Number of candidates hired was 4. Number of remaining eligible candidates, 7, 4 of which were not even interviewed. And I'd like to know why not. If they make the eligibility list, why weren't they even interviewed?
Commissioner Coleman, they were not interviewed because they were not reached.
Oh.
As you recall from the rule of three, you're given 3 names for each opening. So it's basically you have the individual that gets hired plus 2 additional names. Once that person gets hired for the next opening, you go to the next individual and then 2 additional names. So given that they were only able to hire 4 candidates, they weren't able to go any further down on the list than probably number 6 or 7, given the case. So there were people that are basically remaining at the bottom of the list that have not been reached yet.
Even though there's currently 1 vacancy.
Correct. There is a vacancy right now. And again, this is not something we like to do or we come to you very often with, but given the internship program, this is why this request is being made at this time.
Thank you.
I mean, we like our lists to go the full 2 years. Makes it easier on us.
I have a question, kind of a follow-up on Commissioner Coleman's. I noticed you say the next 3 eligible candidates have been notified of these cancellation, and you say there's 1 opening, and with that notification and the 1 opening, no one has responded in opposition to canceling. Have those 3 candidates or 3 people been interviewed, or?
The 3 candidates would have been likely interviewed before, I would think. Maybe Rosie or Dave can clarify that for me.
What happened to your hand, Rosie?
I booked it.
Oh my God.
Accident.
Hit the dog.
Not at work. Chair Abkarian and Commissioners, your question, Commissioner, excuse me, Devine, was if the candidates were interviewed after and were notified after, and the answer is no. None of the names have been actually certified to be interviewed at this point. We wanted to first seek the Commission's approval to see what the direction is going to be, whether we can go ahead and cancel the list and do a new recruitment, so we wouldn't want to waste the certification if we're not going to proceed with those folks.
If I can clarify, for this current opening, the next 3 names were not interviewed for this opening at this time. They may have been interviewed for previous openings. Is that correct?
Yes, the next 3 names that were notified have each been interviewed at least once at various times.
Bottom line is that the next 3 eligible candidates on the list, as well as the Glendale City Employee Association, has been notified about the proposed list cancellation. And if any of those 3 eligible candidates were opposed to the cancellation of this list, they would be here tonight.
Correct.
That is correct.
And we have no cards.
No, sir, not that I know.
We actually...
And do you know, how was the notification made? Do you know if they actually received notification?
Yes, we are aware of the fact that they have received the notification. We received 1 inquiry phone call from one of the...
Actually 2.
And then the second one, yes. So 2 of the 3 did make phone calls inquiring about this process and how it works, and they were notified again of the location and time of the meeting, and they did not.
Commissioner Devine, because we're taking the additional step of notifying, technically, we don't have to even notify anyone. Everything is posted and they should know. But I think about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, we've decided that to stay in the safe side, at least the U.S. mail, a letter, not certified, but sent through U.S. mail, will go to these parties, specifically discussing our meeting here tonight, and giving them an opportunity to come and go in front of us if they have any issues. So, and that is just an additional step that we're taking that is not required of the city, but we have decided to do that just so there won't be any questions done at. And if they didn't receive it, then I would assume that there will be a return mail coming back to us, and you'll notify us of that, correct?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Pleasure.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second. Motion and a second May I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Devine?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Gantas?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Chair Karian.
Yes. Next item.
Report on retaining independent counsel for the commission.
Okay, before we get started on this series of opinions, I have been, I didn't mean to get that upset. I've been asked by the city attorney not to make any comments in reference to the legal opinions that are to follow, and that's as much as I'm allowed to say at this point. Thank you.
Bye.
No, I don't have to recuse myself. I just can't make any comments, so, based on the city attorney's recommendation. So, with that, go ahead. I can't make comments, you guys can. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, based on your inability to speak on this issue at this time, and possibly at some later date you would be able to, and also based on the fact that City Council is now in discussions about having a police and or fire commission sometime in the future, and since these subjects relate to the same types of duties that those commissions may be doing, I would suggest at this time that we table this issue until such time as the subject of the police commission and fire commission is deliberated and resolved with the City Council.
My opinion, I agree with you. The only thing is, I think we should separate the first part of your comment as far as, I don't know if time will resolve, I mean, if we postpone this, Albert, would you be in a position to comment later on it, or you won't know?
There is an issue that needs to be resolved in reference to an ongoing litigation,
Okay.
which doesn't involve me, doesn't involve my involvement with the city, but due to an issue that just came up this morning, I'm asked not to make any comments from the city attorney's office. I'm asked not to make any comments in reference to the investigatory power of and the legal opinion that follows. In reference to the independent counsel for that, I am not making any comments on that portion of it because it relates to what follows. So as such, I won't be making any comments based on the advice of counsel. Hey, I usually am on the other side giving the advice, and now I'm told I can't, so I feel like I'm in Congress. That's
My opinion would be that I think as far as council's visiting the possibility of police commission or not, I think that's, even though eventually they tie in, but I think we should look into this issue and at least hear the report that is prepared for us, and I'd like to try to clarify this issue if we can.
But I'm actually, at this point, I'm actually, just so there won't be any confusion, I'm going to leave and hand the gavel over to Mr. Coleman, and I'll be in the back until this number 8, 9, 10 are discussed.
Mr. Braden.
Yes, Mr. Coleman, just so we're clear, we're just dealing with number 9 right now, which is the only one that's been read in the record.
Correct.
Mr. Acting Chairperson.
Yes.
Well, I tend to agree with Mr. Manukian. In hearing how the so-called maybe police commission, maybe fire commission is going to be set up, it has absolutely nothing to do with investigation. It's more of a public forum. They wouldn't have any investigatory rights anyway, because those are all, at least to the extent, assuming that we have jurisdiction to do that, it would be under our penumbra, and we have certain rights that we can do. I personally think that with respect to this item, while it does somewhat pertain to some of the other ones, I think it is an overall issue of whether we can hire independent counsel for whatever reason. Although it does have some bearing, I think it's a much broader issue. And I personally think that we could go forward with this particular issue. We'll deal with the other issues as they come up. I certainly don't want to take an issue that doesn't have Mr. Abkarian's input on it, at least from the other areas. But this one, I think, can be discussed. Mr. Abkarian can hear our discussion. And I think we can give some direction, or at least get some resolution of it on this one. But maybe some of the other ones I might think differently on. But I don't think the police commission or the fire commission has any relevance to any, certainly not this issue, and certainly not, I don't think, any of the other ones, frankly.
And I agree with you. And I don't know if it's my place to say this, or if we should just let Mr. Braden discuss his opinion, but it's very, very clear, you know, in the second paragraph, with one very limited exception, unless the commission paid for outside counsel, the commission would have to make the request of the city council in the event the commission desired to retain outside counsel.
Or pay for it.
Or what?
Or pay for it. If
Or
we
pay
want it,
for it.
or pay for it.
And at that, I think we'll just turn it over to Mr. Braden. We've got at least three of us that feel that we can deal with this one issue without Chair Abkarian's participation.
All right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So let's move forward on it.
All right, I will proceed. As the commission knows, this report was written upon the request of the commission to obtain a legal opinion as to their authority to obtain independent counsel should they so desire. And the opinion concludes that in absence of a change to the charter, or unless the commission somehow wanted to pay for independent counsel from financial resources outside of the city of Glendale, the only way to obtain independent counsel would be either one, for the commission in working in conjunction with the city attorney's office, since the city attorney's office is responsible for all the legal affairs of the city under the direction of the city council, to make a formalized motion to the city council to retain independent counsel on any particular matter. And as I've described in the report, that is the best practice that probably should be used. But on the other hand, there's nothing in the charter or any other law for that matter which would prevent individual commissioners approaching council on an individual basis and requesting independent counsel be hired on any particular issue, with the caveat that need to make sure that the commissioners don't obtain a collective concurrence outside of the Brown Act and then somehow approach the council in that fashion. In other words, the commission can only act as a commission on matters which have been properly agendized and notice given to the public under the Brown Act, and then take action pursuant thereto. So it'd be a violation of the Brown Act were to three commissioners, for example, talk on the telephone and decided that they wanted to approach council with a request that independent counsel be, and when I say council, I'm talking city council, C-O-U, and C-I-L, not C-O-U-N-S-E-L, should they want to take action to hire an independent attorney, the three of the commission members could not meet by telephone or on the side to decide to approach council in that manner, because that would be a violation of the Brown Act. As I've noted in the opinion, as referenced by members of the commissioners, one very narrow, limited exception to that, and that exception is that pursuant to Civil Service Commissioner versus Superior Court, 163 Calap 3rd 70, if there was a conflict of interest within the city attorney's office, with the result that the city attorney's office could not advise the commission on a particular matter, then the commission would be authorized, were that actual conflict to occur, they could then retain independent counsel. However, number one, it's extremely unlikely that that would occur because the city attorney's office has a policy that creates an ethical wall whereby the advisor to the commission does not communicate on matters pending before the commission, so that ethical wall, there's no conflict of interest created by sharing confidential information. So it's highly unlikely that that would ever arise. And then secondly, we still have the second prong of the problem, that is, even assuming that under that very limited scenario, the commission would have the authority, as described in the case referenced in the memorandum, in which I've just alluded to in my oral presentation. In the unlikely event that it would arise, then the question arises, that conflict arises, then the question arises who would pay for that. Once again, all budgetary decisions are made by the city council, and they would have to authorize payment, except if some court somewhere found that that the representation to the Civil Service Commission by the independent attorney would qualify for the payment of the attorney's fees under the private attorney general theory. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
I want to get clarification on something that you said at the very beginning of your presentation. This item is agendized today. The report on retaining independent counsel for the commission. And in your opinion, is there anything within the Brown Act in open session for, let's say, 3 or more commissioners to discuss the possibility of going to the city council, one, for approval, and or discuss the possibility of actually the commissioners paying out of pocket for outside counsel?
Are you talking in general or on a specific matter?
I'm talking specifically about hiring an outside counsel. In your opinion letter, you state that the only way it's going to happen is if we go, if the commission would make a request to the city council. It doesn't say anything about a specific commissioner. So I want to know whether or not we can discuss it now in open session amongst ourselves with regards to whether or not, one, we wanted to go to the city council and or pay for outside counsel out of our own pocket. We're in open session.
There's nothing to prevent that.
Okay.
Notice that we provided would allow that discussion to ensue.
So this is really the only opportunity that we have as a body to discuss it legally, without violating the Brown Act.
No, you could always agendize it at any time you wanted to.
Okay, but we can discuss it tonight.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Manoukian.
Thank you. A couple of questions. First of all, on your report, when you state that you recommend that we go through the city attorney's office in making this request, even though we don't necessarily have to, what do you mean going through I just want a little bit more clarification. What role would the city attorney's office play in this process? Do they pick the counsel that will give the second opinion? Is that part of the function?
Ultimately, the city council makes a decision about who to hire as an independent counsel on any given matter. Okay. The normal course of events is that the city attorney will make a recommendation that a specific attorney or law firm be hired on a specific matter. And so that's what I meant by working through the city attorney's office in terms of coming up with a recommendation to hire independent counsel on any matter.
Okay. I understand, but there was one part. Their involvement is to help us pick their attorney, or their involvement is to actually go to the council and make that request on our behalf? I just want to find out exactly what role the city attorney's office will play in this process.
The role of the city attorney's office would be to make a recommendation to the city council
What recommendation?
to hire a particular law firm or attorney
Okay.
to represent.
So they get
Commission
to
on a particular-
recommend a specific attorney that should give the second, correct?
Well, I don't know about, when you say second opinion, I don't know what you're talking about, but in the general sense, on whatever matter that the commission would desire independent counsel, C-O-U-N-S-E-L,
Okay, I know.
on any particular matter, then the city attorney, which has been the way it's been handled, would make that recommendation of a particular law firm or attorney on that matter.
Okay. So their role would be, they would recommend to the city council that to hire a specific firm to give that opinion, correct?
If it was an opinion that was at issue,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Now, to add to your, what you said, Commissioner Coleman, since it is agendized, what is the process if my fellow commissioners agree to make this request directly to the city council? What do we have to do?
Motion.
Okay.
But if I'm hearing Mr. Braden correctly, and stop me, if I'm doing something inappropriate, Mr. Gantis, Mr. Braden.
I'm ready to stop. It's not inappropriate.
The issue at hand is retaining independent counsel. That's number 9 on the agenda. The next item, which we probably will not discuss tonight, is a report on the jurisdiction of the Civil Service Commission over investigations and recourse available to the Commission upon discovery of employee misconduct. Now, hypothetically speaking, if we were to request an outside counsel opinion on item number 10, would we, in fact, as a commission, go through the city attorney's office, and if approved by the city council, then the city attorney is going to pick the law firm and/or attorney?
No.
Okay.
No, the city attorney would go to the city council in closed session on a closed session item that was agendized under the Brown Act regarding retaining independent counsel, whether it was a law firm or an attorney, to give an opinion, if you wanted, on the jurisdiction of the commission to make investigations and to take action or to make recommendations regarding employee misconduct, for example. So the city attorney would go to the city council in closed session with a recommendation, and undoubtedly, I can't speak for Mr. Howard because he's the one that does these things, and he and I have not talked about it, but he would seek the input of the commission in some fashion. Once again, the problem would come up, he can't do that individually because it would have to be a Brown Act matter, but...
Okay. Mr. Gantis.
Well, I don't think I agree with Mr. Braden totally on the role of the city attorney, and I think that nor the role of the council, and I think it's important that, I know Mr. Manoukian is curious about that. I think what the city attorney's role is twofold. I think Ron's correct in terms of the city attorney will probably make a recommendation, and that's because the city attorney maintains a list of attorneys that it's created that are qualified to work in this particular area of the law. But the additional role of the city attorney in this, Mr. Manoukian and the rest of my fellow commissioners, would be to be basically the carrier pigeon. We can put whatever we want in a motion and take it to the city council. the city council indeed would be, it'd be taken to them, and the city attorney would make recommendations. City council can do whatever it wishes to do, though. If, in fact, as Mr. Braden has referred in this opinion, a commissioner, Roy Coleman, goes to speak to Councilman Yusefian and says, Councilman Yusefian, we want Joe Blow to be our attorney. Now, you're not going to hear that from the city. This is who we want. Or we could put that in a motion. And the city council can either choose to accept the recommendation or not the recommendation of the city attorney. And it's solely left in their decision-making because, as Ron has quite correctly pointed out, bottom line is city council is responsible for spending the money of the city, and hiring a lawyer is part of spending the money of the city. We have the right to hire this attorney if we want to pay for it, or as he quite rightly points out, less likely that the court would award that in some sort of a litigation against the city council itself to reimburse because there's been some public benefit under whatever code section that is. But that's a correct analysis. But I think it's important to know the city attorney has more of a role that, in this case, Ron becomes our carrier pigeon to take, no offense, Ron, I don't mean it that way, but he takes what we want to do. We can put whatever we want in our motion. We can make whatever requests we want, and we can formulate what we want to do with that. Now, and our choices are two. The choice is the city council says okay or not, or we say the heck with it, we're going to do it anyway.
Yes.
And I don't believe that anything that I said contradicts what Mr. Ganta said. I said you can either way go through the city attorney, which I think is a better practice because under the charter, the legal affairs are within the charge of the city attorney subject to the direction of the council, or, as I said in my report, you can go as a commission. So I
directly
don't disagree with anything Mr. Ganta said, and that's what I said in my report, and that's what I said in my oral report.
Okay.
And let me just say that by the way, just so the public's, I don't think this issue, and I know this issue, has anything to do with our current representation.
Exactly.
It's more, in my mind, with what is an appearance, if you will, of a possibility of a conflict and maybe not a full amount of independence. I know Ron's going to tell us, and we're aware of it, that there's a firewall that exists and people don't speak to him about civil service and he doesn't speak to them about civil service in the city. And I don't doubt that that's true, and I know it's available, but there has been a concern on certain issues that have arisen, and Chair Pro Tem Coleman has alluded to one of them, that possibly an independent lawyer might have a different view or a different flavor on what we consider to be a very significant issue. And I think that's the reason this is being brought up. And I think the bottom line is, the thing is, we can pretty much do what we want. It's the question of how it's going to get paid. And if we want to pay for it, we don't need to go to the city council. We can hire anybody we want. But if we want the city to pay for it, the city council has the purse strings, and they have to okay it. And typically the city attorney has his list of people that he knows are qualified in these areas. This is not an easy area because it deals with civil service types of work, but certainly we have information on some attorneys that we've worked with, and we may make a specific request. City attorney could say, no, I think it ought to be this person. The city council could say, nope, we're going to go along with the request of the Civil Service Commission. 4-1 vote, we win.
Okay, I'm going to give you at least my take. I agree with you 100%. I don't think any of this has anything to do, I mean, it's not that we're doubting the city attorney's office. I mean, the question here, at least for myself, during the process of some of the hearings, we've come across some very disturbing things that we would like to find the correct way of addressing. Now, we are being told, based on an opinion, that the charter does not allow us, we don't have the specific rights. We respect that. However, as far as my concern, and I think I'm hearing the same thing from my fellow commissioners. What we're trying to do is obtain a second opinion. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I don't think anyone is doubting, Mr. Braden, your opinion. However, I would like to be on the safe side, and at least I would like to request that we make a direct request to the city. And now, having the city attorney's office involved with it, I'd love that. I don't have a problem with that. But the whole point, if we're trying to get an independent opinion, just so if this issue ever comes up again, we have two opinions, and hopefully they're going to be the same. I don't think it is the right thing for the city attorney's office to dictate which firm is going to provide the second opinion. I think between Mr. Gantis and Mr. Abkarian and the commission, I think you guys have enough experience to direct us in the right direction. You know, I don't know. I mean, I would, if possible, I would like to make that request, that we request directly to the city council to provide us the funding to be able to obtain a second opinion on what the role of this commission is, or just provide the funding for the council.
We're kind of getting, Mr. Coe, starting to go into, I hear Mr. Braden's whispering to himself that we're getting into that other issue that we haven't agendized yet.
Okay,
I think the issue is, can we? We know we can,
okay,
and maybe we move to the other issue, but that's an issue that maybe Mr. Abkarian wanted to be heard on, but I don't disagree with your analysis, by the way.
So whatever, if it's a motion that you need, get the ball rolling, and if my fellow commissioners agree, let's request the funding.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, under item 9, if the commission wants to make a motion to hire an independent firm and to seek counsel, either to pay for it and with a specific recommendation as to a firm or an attorney, to give an opinion to the commission on the jurisdiction of the civil, to give an opinion, without repeating that, to give an opinion on item number 10, you can do that tonight if you want. Now, I don't know, it's up to you whether you're prepared to go that far as to whether you want to name a specific firm and all of that.
We don't have to, right? I mean, at this stage, we can make a motion just requesting the authorization to get funding. Why do we?
No, I disagree. I think you need to have, you need to ask the city council to hire, and if, in that case, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I can say, I apologize.
No, you're saying exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Feel free.
Okay, I apologize. I'm so not used to sitting this far away from the chair that I just... I can see that. No, how about if I sit out there?
No.
That we can... Mr. Braden's absolutely correct. If we just do what you want to do, then that is basically leaving it to the city attorney to do exactly what Mr. Braden says and that you've said you didn't want to do. It would seem to me we could... Let me finish. It would seem to me that we could do one of two things. We could do that, and I know I have somebody in mind, and I haven't even talked to him, and I honestly have not spoken to Mr. Abkarian about this, but I think he would agree that a attorney, we can direct that the issue of hiring counsel be put on the next agenda, and direct Mr. Braden to give us a list of 3 attorneys that are on the list that he can get from the city attorney that we can look at and choose. The city council does not have to take our recommendation, but it seems to me I would like to be in a position to do exactly that, because then it takes that decision out of the city attorney's office as to who the 3 are. There are 3, and we can ask Mr. Braden to provide it to us a week before, and Mr. Abkarian and I, and any of you, Mr. Devine, I mean, there's internet, and you can find out a heck of a lot about attorneys very, very quickly on the internet. But that would be, I would think, make more sense than just saying request the funding, because that's just too vague. You need to, I think, be more specific.
Okay.
Well, and also to add to that, there's really difficult to ascertain how much money is going to be needed. You don't know the rates of any individual attorney or firm.
That's true.
Which to a large extent is going to trigger how much is going to be spent. Haven't talked to that firm in terms of getting an estimate as to how much time they're going to take to issue that opinion. So, you know, in that sense, we're operating in a vacuum.
No, I understand. I guess, let me clarify. My point was not necessarily to allocate a certain... My point is, why can't we just, first of all, find out if, in fact, the city council... Well, now I see, I understand. You basically, at this stage, what we have to do is, if we want to go down that route, we have to, among us, talk about or find a way of picking the attorneys that we want to possibly use, obtain a quote from them, then go to council with a motion requesting an approval for that?
Yes.
Okay. I understand.
And we can direct our city attorney to do all of that.
Is that something my fellow commissioners would be interested in pursuing, or?
Commissioner Devine?
Okay, well, I've appreciated the very interesting discussion, but I think it gets back to my point. Looking at the big picture, it sounds like we want to hire a city attorney, outside attorney, to give us an opinion on the city attorney's opinion regarding our investigative powers, when that issue may become moot if the city council decides to create a body or an entity that has the powers that we want to find out if we can use. And again,
They cannot create an entity that trumps our powers because we're charter created.
But
well,
that's only the fire
they're not, it's not
department
trumping,
and the police department.
no, it's
How about
not
the
trumping
rest?
our powers. We don't have the powers, according to the city attorney. All I'm saying is that we need to find out first, or in my opinion, we need to find out first what the city council is going to do in terms of this big picture of creating some body or entity that's going to take care of the issues that we're concerned about.
But that's just a police commission or a fire commission. That's not, how about the rest of the employees? That doesn't necessarily cover...
Well, we don't know what it's going to end up. All we know is that they're very interested in it. They have another study session scheduled for, I think, later this month or next month. And to me, we're kind of getting the cart before the horse. We need to find out first what they're going to end up doing in terms of this other entity or body, and then decide whether or not we want to pursue a outside counsel to give us an opinion on this issue.
Is your hand raised, or,
Yes.
or you're just holding your...
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, Mr. Devine, that's not correct. Because they cannot create a commission that has powers that we have. If we had, the thought is, what is the jurisdiction of the Civil Service Commission? If the Civil Service Commission has the jurisdiction, they cannot create a commission that takes that jurisdiction away from us.
I agree.
Because we are created by the charter. The question is, what in the charter, what powers do we have as set forth in the charter? Now, as a subset to that, and one of my questions was, that I knew the answer to, is regardless of what the legal opinion is, if the city council were to direct us to do an investigation, Mr. Braden, you can chime in on this, the city council can direct us to do an investigation with all of the powers we have in the charter in terms of swearing in witnesses, subpoenaing witnesses, and all the other stuff, if it is something that's outside our jurisdiction. But the very question that is being asked here and is at the focal point of this independent counsel for the so-called second opinion is, what is our jurisdiction? And that would be as it is set forth in the city charter. If, in fact, a second opinion was that we had that jurisdiction in the area of, for instance, investigations regarding employee misconduct or other such thing, then the city council cannot create a commission to do that. We have what we have, and that's what we're trying to find out. What do we have? The police commission and the fire commission won't be able to do that because we're charter created, unless there's another charter amendment that specifically takes that away from us.
I think it's the first time in my life that I've agreed with you 100%.
100%?
Bizarre. Bizarre day.
Well, let me ask one other question then. Let's suppose we hire this independent counsel and he comes in and determines that he does not agree with the city attorney opinion and that we have broader powers. So now we have our attorney telling us something, we have the city attorney telling us something different. Where does it go from there? I'm directing this to Mr. Braden.
Well, ultimately, if the commission were to act, let's say, outside of the scope of their powers in some fashion, and were to investigate what they perceived a matter that needed to be investigated that, in my view, is outside of their powers, the party or individual or employee or whoever it might be who was being investigated could either choose to acquiesce in that investigation or, raise that challenge in court and say, the Civil Service Commission does not have the power to investigate that, and take a writ of mandate up on that particular matter to have the matter decided by a court.
Couldn't we do that then without the outside counsel's opinion?
Yes.
Why do we need outside counsel? If that's going to how it's going to end up anyway, why bother going through this exercise? Let's just test it.
That's not...
Well, you could, and, obviously this delves into the second opinion, which I know you all read, and, it's my recommendation you not do that, and for the reasons I've stated,
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but you haven't answered my question. If our outside counsel disagrees with you and says we have this power, this jurisdiction, where do we go from there? Can we then act on his opinion and do what you just suggested and then still be subject to a writ and a court action?
Right, that's what I said at first. I mean, you could do it now. I mean, that's why I said in response to your first question.
So then why have outside
could do it, and if a party wanted to challenge that under the authority that, in their view, you did not have jurisdiction to take the particular action that you were intending to take, they would either, number one, could simply refuse to, participate in that investigation, and if any adverse action came out of that investigation, then they could take that on a writ to Superior Court, that you did not have jurisdiction. And with the result that if the court determined that you did not have jurisdiction, there'd be a lot of time and money spent on that particular issue.
My opinion, at least as far as in that situation, at least in my opinion, the right thing to do is go back to council and present the second opinion and the city attorney's opinion. Let them give some clarification of what they would like to see us done. That's at least my opinion of. We have two different. If in fact there are two different opinions, why can't we go back to council and present them? Here's the findings for the opinion. What is the correct action to do?
You wouldn't necessarily.
That's just my opinion. I'm not asking for a legal opinion, guys. It's my opinion. That's what I would do.
One of the other reasons, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One of the other reasons, Mr. Devine, that you would do this is arguably if you acted outside of the scope of your attorney's advice, arguably you're acting ultra vires, outside of the scope of your power. And you, I don't know about personal liability, but there's certainly some penalties. What could happen is if in other words, if you said a potato is brown and we decided it's a blue potato, and ultimately the court agreed with, we would not have any backing to take that action. It's definitely beyond the scope of our powers. Obviously, if we had a second opinion that said that, then we've done our due diligence and we at least acted within what we thought reasonably was the scope of our powers.
And the effect of that would be, as you described, Mr. Ganta's conduct, which is ultra vires or outside of your powers, which is the same thing as acting outside of your authority or your jurisdiction, one and the same. I mean, number one, the remedy would be that any action taken would be determined to be null and void by the court. And number two, if taxpayer funds were used to support, used to finance that activity, then subject to a taxpayer's lawsuit, then that expenditure would be disallowed.
But that's why you get a second opinion, because at least if you have some backing, you're arguably, not arguably, you're almost certainly not acting ultra vires.
Who's to say that, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
and who's to say that if we get a second opinion, then someone could come in and get a third attorney in there to find something else? I mean, this could go on and on. We're dealing with such what appears to be a very nebulous reading of the charter and the civil service rules. Conceivably, there could be a third opinion or a fourth opinion. So to act on just one second opinion on this type of issue, to me, is not the most prudent way to go.
In terms of a third opinion or fourth opinion or whatever, if somebody outside of this body or city government, some citizen decide to get another opinion, I mean, that would, not be binding upon the Civil Service Commission at all, any more than the opinion from the city attorney's office, i.e. my opinion, is binding. This is my legal opinion, my legal advice to you. That's all.
It's worth the price you paid for it. Oh, sorry. That was a joke, ladies and gentlemen, because it is a very well-crafted opinion. That was definitely a joke. Sorry.
Okay, we've had a discussion on this. Does anybody want to take action on this agendized item?
I do. So basically, I'd like to make a motion that, well, wait a minute.
I'm listening to you.
But you said we should first do our due diligence before, because does my motion right now need to include a specific attorney, or can I make a motion that we go to council with a recommendation and a request?
I would say the way to handle it would be, if you want to make a motion, is to agendize this, and I don't think the next meeting is soon enough. Because,
but I thought it's agendized.
Well, is to agendize it, to bring back, Mr. Gant has suggested 3 names of law firms or attorneys, and at the same time, any individual commissioner could talk to the city attorney with additional recommendations, to come back with a list of recommendations as to select a law firm or a sole practitioner to get a second opinion on the jurisdiction of the commission or investigations, and to present that to the city council. Make that come back within a month, assuming that the information can be gathered, and their curriculum vitae can be obtained. If we don't have it, we have some, but and their fees and everything else.
Yes.
Would that also include the need to have an RFP spelling out the work program and what their duties will be, and those other things? In other words, we're asking for some outside attorney. Don't we need to ask or tell them what we want them to do for us in this proposal?
You don't need an RFP, to hire outside counsel. In the first place, the city attorney does have a series of outside firms and their individual expertise in a whole wide variety of matters that we use all the time. And so that would be a basis for starting that. If individual commission members wanted to make additional recommendations to the city attorney, then they could pick up the phone and do that.
Okay, let me rephrase mine. What do I need to do to request? What is the procedure in making the motion to go through the process you just explained.
What do you want to do? What do you want to do?
What I'd like to do is to have the ability to go to council with a list of who you guys decide. I mean, put it together of 3 attorneys that we would like to get an opinion of their interpretation of the charter, what our rights are, just to have as a second opinion.
Make a motion to come back within a month with a list of 3 attorneys' law firms to obtain a second opinion on the jurisdiction of the commission to investigate matters in general and employee misconduct in specific.
Exactly what he said. If that's something that my fellow commissioners would be interested in.
And that would be, in addition, it starts out that you direct our city attorney, Ron Braden, to do that. Is that correct?
Or any other suggestions?
Well, no, that would be, his wording is perfect.
Okay.
But just that it be in the form of a direction to our city attorney, so
Correct.
that we have a right to direct our city attorney to come back with us with 3 names. And why do you need a month, Ron?
Well, because the agenda for the next meeting has to be done within a week.
Oh, okay. All right.
And,
Okay.
okay,
Exactly what he said.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Devine,
No.
Commissioner Coleman,
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian,
Yes.
Commissioner Gantis.
Yes.
Okay. The next item, item number 10, I'm going to suggest that, and it deals specifically with report on jurisdiction of the Civil Service Commission over investigations and resource available to the Commission upon discovery of employee misconduct. And I know Mr. Braden has put in a lot of time and effort in the report. I know for one, I've read it and reread it and reread it. But without Chair Abkarian being present, I'm going to suggest that this item be tabled until
When he comes back with the lawyers list in a month.
one, after Mr. Braden comes back with the list, and 2, when Chair Abkarian feels free that he can also participate in the discussion.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah.
Or
we can just either motion or, if it's the consensus of the commission is to take it off calendar, we'll just take it off calendar and come back when
When the commission deems appropriate.
yes.
No, I disagree with that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I would like it, again, it's already done, so it's not a big thing to agendize it on the exact day that he brings back the motion regarding the attorney's fees. It may not be the appropriate time, but it may be the appropriate time, so that it's all part of the same thing, and we can decide then maybe we will want to discuss a portion of it and then continue it on in terms of getting that attorney. But I think we want to be sure it's on the agenda so that we can discuss it if we need to as part of that attorney's motion.
My sentiment is, and I hear you loud and clear, I do not want Chair Abkarian, isolated and not a part of that
I agree.
agendized item.
Agree.
Agree with you 100%. And we can postpone it at that time if it hasn't resolved.
All right, okay, then
That's the
then
understanding.
that's what we'll do.
Now,
I
that's
don't
the
want to do
understanding.
that without Albert there either. I want him...
But we may need it on the agenda to do that. We may need to discuss portions of it to get the other motion passed. So let's get it on the agenda, and I agree with Sam and you, absolutely not. Chair Abkarian must be a part of the substantive discussion, and maybe it's available then, and if not, then we'll put it over again, but that won't delay us doing the attorney's thing.
All right.
Because that's still a process that has to go through.
All right. So we can agendize that for some time in,
You said it
Second meeting after this one.
okay,
That would be October the 8th.
October something, 8th. I think.
October 8th?
October 8th.
You said we don't necessarily have to have a motion for that, right? Just a consensus is enough?
No.
Correct.
Okay.
Just a clarification question, since I'm really not certain what concerns the commission has. I mean, I understand in part what it is, but when you say you're going to need the report possibly to discuss retaining independent counsel on the particular issue, in terms of putting it on the agenda in order of priority, it sounds like you want the report related to your right to investigate first, followed by the agenda item of retaining independent counsel.
No.
No, okay.
The only reason I want it on the agenda, I don't want us to get there and we're going to decide we want a certain item that's part of what we want to hire the attorney, and it comes back, well, no, that item is not a part of the agenda. That's really my, in an abundance of caution, I want that on there so that we may want to discuss this, we may want to discuss parts of your report that's currently under number 10, and maybe parts or most we would deem to be left so that we could have the input of Commissioner Abkarian, because that's the way I would want to do it. But to the extent that we would want to cull some of that information so that we can move the motion forward on the attorneys, because it's still going to take us a month or month and a half to get to City Council anyway with what we have, so that way we can keep this going so that we're prepared at the time Mr. Abkarian is prepared to be a part of this to properly instruct our council. If we hold this off until then, we may be delaying it even that much further.
So you want it as one agenda item?
No, 2 agenda items, but we may be cross-referencing them. Unless you want to do it as one agenda item.
I'm just trying to find out which one you want first.
Put it together.
Put it together if you can.
Well, I'm trying to read what you're trying to arrive at, because I don't know.
What I want to arrive at is to be able to discuss parts of this, talk about this, when we're talking about the attorney.
All right.
We don't want to be told you can't talk about that.
That's correct. All right. So in an abundance of
If it makes
caution,
sense.
I want it on the agenda. Then we can. Then everybody knows about it.
Or October 8th.
Hey, is that okay, Mr. Chairperson?
Yes. Well, it's perfectly okay with me. I just want to make it perfectly clear to everybody, I will not be here on October 22nd. I will be out of state. So if we can't do it on October 8th, then
We'll do it.
it's going to be the first month, or the first meeting in November.
Perfect.
Okay?
Okay.
All right.
So,
Anything else on this particular issue?
you want me to tell Albert to come back?
Yes. Next item, please.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the agenda forecast needs a little updating. As our next meeting, we have moved the annual activity report to the September 24th of 08 meeting. It's also the meeting where we have set the consideration of rule amendments. And then the 2 items that were addressed as far as the specific request for outside counsel to be carried over to October the 8th, and also bring back the item on the jurisdiction of Civil Service Commission over investigations, also to be brought back on October the 8th. With that, if you have any further amendments, we'll go with that.
Okay. Any amendments to the agenda forecast?
I do have one comment. Consideration of the rule amendments, if we can get that to us, as soon as possible, I would like to have more than just a day or two to review. I'm going over the amendment myself, but recommendations by the city, discussions with the employee association, we don't get to do this too often. So I would appreciate if we have a little bit more leeway as to what you're presenting to us, so we know where to go and have more time to review it.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
Frankly, Mr. Chair, I still have plenty of work to do on that, and
Do you want to just move that to a different date? I like to I'd rather do this right once than to do it wrong.
That
I mean, you need to discuss the amendments with the employee association. Then we're going to have recommendations
Why don't we...
that you have to then go back to the employee association, the management, and all the rest of the people to discuss with them. But if you think you need more time, there's nothing pressing on this particular issue.
I would appreciate more time.
About moving it up to the December 10th meeting.
Would that give you...
That sounds...
Mr. Chair, is it your expectation that I will have met and conferred with all the employee associations? Because what my intent was on that was to throw out some general concepts. First of all, address the I believe it was 4 or 5 issues that didn't pass city council muster, whenever that was, 3-4 years ago, and also to bring forth some other thoughts and things that have come forth over the past few years that we believe need to be amended. So I'm not sure how firm any of these are. I thought we would explore them initially, and if it looks like these are amendments we'd certainly like to pursue, then at that point I would thus like to take it to the
So this is a discussion, is what you're-
associations.
Mr. Chair?
That's yes.
I think that I agree with you. I think you're 100% right. You first bring it to us, which are ones who actually voted to go as an amendment. Then you'll take it to the employee associations, discuss it with them. Because if we're not going to approve them, there's no need to discuss it with them and get into an issue. And then we can bring all the recommendations to us. We can agree with some, we can disagree with the rest, or we can agree with all, and then we can take that to the city council, and hopefully they'll agree with our recommendations. So with that, wouldn't it be better? If we're not going to take it to employee association, wouldn't November 12th be better? Because the reason I say that is because if we do it on December 10th, then we won't be able to discuss it again until January 14th.
I won't be here for that meeting,
Okay, then there is a good reason for it.
For which meeting?
November 12th.
Why don't you consider leaving it where it is? And
No,
Let's do it on October. How about October 22nd? That should give you enough
I
time.
won't be here.
You won't.
Oh, you won't be here.
Let's go with
December it is.
December 10th. So we're all here.
There's no rush on this stuff.
No.
And Matt, if you come back on December 10th said you didn't have enough time, then I won't buy you
Shame on
lunch
you.
anymore.
Okay, are we all clear? We're going to,
When have I ever bought you lunch? He said. Matt, you're right.
take the air out of your tires and...
all right, so just so we're clear, we're moving the consideration of
See how
rule
skinny he
amendments
is?
from
Obviously,
November
I forget.
24th to December 10th.
Yep.
Okay. Next item.
Reports and information, past due employee performance evaluations.
Mr. Chair, this is your monthly report. We have no third notices. We have, appears to be a total of 4 second notices and 11 first notices, different departments.
All right. Any comments?
Did you want to read these, Mr.?
Not particularly.
Okay. Move to adjourn.
Anybody want to read them?
It's your job. If you don't want to do it, I don't want to do it.
What's next?
Civil Service Commission and staff comments.
Any comments?
Before, just a request, before we go to closed session, can we take a 5-minute break or a couple-minute break?
I don't see why not.
It says yes to everything today.
Okay.
Does the fire department want to make any comments about their event that they have coming up? Maybe somebody out there would like to buy some tickets or do something else. So if you don't mind, Mr. Chair,
No, go ahead.
put in a plug.
Thank you. Mr. Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Harold Scoggins, Fire Chief. What Commissioner Albuquerque was referring to is our annual Fire Department Awards Luncheon. It will be held October the 8th at the Glendale Hilton from 11:30 to 1:30. And that's an event where we get together in unison with the Glendale Sunrise Rotary Club, who are the sponsors of the event, for us to recognize the men and women of the Glendale Fire Department and the community who have performed outstanding service to the community over the past year. It could be in projects, programs, or acts of heroism in the line of duty. So it's been a really successful event over the last few years, and we encourage the community to come on out and participate and learn a little bit more about your fire department.
And if they want to get tickets, what do they call?
If you'd like to purchase tickets, you can call our Glendale Fire Administration at 818-548-4814. That's 818-548-4814. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that wraps it up for our September 10th, 2008 Civil Service Commission. We are now going into closed session, and
After a 5-minute recess,
after a 5-minute recess,
and I would anticipate reporting out.
and we will anticipate reporting out,
But not on TV.
but not on TV. Thank you very much.